Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October 5th, 2011 meeting of the Daytona Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. We're delighted to have you with us this evening. Ms. Thomas will now review the procedures for tonight's meeting.
Good evening. Agendas are available in the front of the room on the table to my right. All of the exhibits pertaining to items on the agenda are posted on the bulletin board here in the chambers. Please feel free to view them at any time during today's meeting. You are required to fill out a yellow form. My assistant, Ms. LaMagna, is holding the form up. You must complete the sections that ask for your name, address, topic of concern, agenda item number, signature, and date. The form must be completed and placed in a designated box prior to the item coming before the Community Redevelopment Agency. Citizens may speak before the Community Redevelopment Agency during item number 6. All citizens completing a yellow form will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. When you approach the lectern, please speak clearly into the mic and give your full name and address. The 3-minute clock will begin. You will be told when your time has expired. All conversation must take place either at the lectern or on the dais so that everyone can hear the business that's being discussed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilliland.
Here.
Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds. Here. Commissioner Shelley.
Here.
Commissioner Woods.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Mayor Glenn Ritchie.
Here, we'll now have the invocation led by Commissioner Henry, followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Gilliland. Please rise for the invocation pledge.
Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, we come to you once again, asking that you give this commission wisdom, guidance, and understanding as we make decisions that would be beneficial to the citizens of this city. In your precious Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move on to item 4A. It is the approval of the September 7th meeting minutes of the Community Redevelopment Agency.
Second.
Commissioner Gilliland's the motion. Commissioner Henry is the second. Is there any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. Like sign opposed. That motion carries 7-0. Now I'll move on to item number 5, the agenda approval. If there's any changes, the manager read them this time.
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
Commissioner Gilliland is the motion, seconded by Commissioner Shelley. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, like sign opposed. That motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, it is public comments by people addressing the Community Redevelopment Agency. I do have several speakers. Our first speaker is Mr. Perman Shepard, and on deck is Turner Himes. Mr. Shepard, are you wanting to discuss the item coming up regarding SAMA?
Yes.
That is at the regular City Commission meeting. This is the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. So we'll be having that meeting momentarily, but we're doing the Community Redevelopment Agency meeting right now. Is that the same for Mrs. Himes? Yes. Thank you. Moving on to our speaker is Mr. John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, 413 North Grandview Avenue, 7B. Public hearing. My request is that if we are having a public hearing on the E-zone, that the public be allowed to speak at the public hearing. The last public hearing we had on the E-zone, the public was not allowed to speak. They were told they could speak to the staff individually, but they could not make their comments publicly known. So it really helps us to be able to hear what other people in the community are saying about a project, and not being able to hear the give and take, I think hurts us in the long run. Secondly, at the Main Street CRA board meeting, they had a, and I'm sorry for you ladies that have to hear this all over again. At their meeting, they discussed the E-zone and voted on the E-zone, which you were as part of your backup. But what happened was, when it came to discuss this item, half of the committee did not have, or half the board did not have the item. They had to adjourn the meeting, duplicate the material, give it to them. They had 10 minutes to read it, and then they had to discuss an item that was extremely, or will be extremely important to the Main Street area and the E-zone. You can't have a 20-year program, $400 million, and have 10 minutes to read it and discuss it. It just doesn't make sense. This is not the only time this has happened. Many meetings, staff gets things to the boards at the last minute. The planning board, their meeting just last week or 2 weeks ago, when the E-zone came to them, they were told, you have to act on it now because it's going to the city commission. So they had to discuss it all in one night, make the same decisions that will affect us for 20 years and $400 million in one night's discussion. It is just too much for them to comprehend. I understand that they're going through it step by step, but you really, if you realize that you've got all of 400 pages or whatever it is to discuss in a half an hour, a lot of people just sit back and don't discuss it because they realize they can't discuss and go into detail. I'm just asking you in the future that the planning board, all the other boards, have this material in enough time so that if they don't have enough time to discuss it, they have another week or another month to be able to discuss it. Having it done all in one night sometimes is overwhelming, and they don't do best for the city. Thank you.
Okay, for the record, that agenda went out the Friday before the meeting, and some of the members forgot to bring their agendas with them. Thank you. Next.
That is our final speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Moving on to our administrative items. Item 7A is the Redevelopment Grant Program Resolution. A resolution approving amendments to the grant programs in the redevelopment areas and providing an effective date.
So, second.
Commissioner Reynolds, the motion. Commissioner Woods is the second.
Mr. Reed Berger, Redevelopment Director, to report.
Reed, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. And good to see all the commissioners here. I'd like to respond to Mr. Nicholson's comments, but I'll hold off in case you want me to clarify anything and go right to the topic here. First of all, you know, back in November 2009, we actually put a lot of new programs together. There was a facade grant that we've had since 2007 by ordinance that was a significant overhaul of some earlier grants that we had. And so as a background now, what we said back in 2009 is we would probably be tweaking these and coming back to you when we had some more information. That's why I'm here tonight. We went to our boards, redevelopment boards, and over the last several months and had on and off some discussion about these various grants. What do the boards think? What do they want to change? Those actions, the final actions, were taken this past month, and so we're here to share with you all of those proposed revisions. There were also some comments that were made in the last few days that I wanted to cover, if I could, with your permission, Mayor, that came from our elected officials, and I thought maybe it'd be good just to cover them very quickly. First of all, there was a question about which businesses are targeted, and exactly where is that information, and we do have that as attachment C on page 16 that's in your packet. And when I say page 16, I'm hopefully referring to the numbering system that's in there. So hopefully all that information is there. There may be some questions about the individual targeted uses. Glad to answer those. Also, there is one item in attachment C that came up about the tourist-related businesses in Main Street, and that probably relates to why would we continue to maybe target gift shops and T-shirt shops, because we have a lot of those. So I can understand that may be a concern. We were really looking at a lot of other tourist uses that could be in there, and that conventioneers, as well as residents, would be interested in having in the Main Street area.
Could I ask a question on that?
Please.
Is that all right, Gina? Because that came from me.
Okay.
And my question was a definition of a tourist-related business. Because as someone who does travel and goes places, I thought that was an antiquated term, was my whole point.
Yeah.
Because people that travel just don't go into, you said, gift shop. They look for all kinds of things. If you go down on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, there's art galleries and there's things that residential people will buy. So my question was, what is a tourist-related, how is that different than, regular retail, I guess, was my question. And I thought that was kind of an antiquated term. So that's where that came from. Because to me, a tourist-related, if we're just saying tourist-related means tea shop, then I think that's a really antiquated term for, I would think it's much broader than that. That was my point.
Well, that's certainly something that we could look into further if it would help, because I have to agree that some of these are ambiguous and we could have 10 different definitions of what it means, or change the word itself. Again, we're trying to get convention in here too, is an important aspect of everything we're trying to accomplish here when conventioneers come to town. The other thing that came up was the landscape grants, and the inclusion of a maintenance requirement is in there, and the inspection is a part of the requirement that we're talking about now, putting in there. And the question then becomes, well, who's going to actually make sure every year while you're making a disbursement that they actually accomplish what we say accomplish? Typically, I know we've had code enforcement that's out there. In this case, what I would be proposing is that redevelopment staff would be taking the responsibility to make sure before anything happens that they're meeting the standards that we require for landscaping, as well as for just appearance standards that we have in our code. So that hopefully answers that.
That question came from me as well.
Okay.
And my point on that, and apparently the targeted business did as well.
Mm-hmm.
However, I did not ask where it was. I knew attachment C. So if there's not another question on targeted businesses,
Mm-hmm.
then that was not the answer to my question on targeted businesses. So if you have another one on targeted businesses, I won't go back to that one. But my question was not where it was. I saw the list.
Okay.
So if that was, because it sounds like these are my questions. My question was I saw the landscape and how it would be done, and Mr. McKittrick explained during the process that redevelopment look at it. What some communities have done, and that's what I was bringing up with him, is at the end of the 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
if it's allowed to go dormant, or it's allowed that many communities have an extension of that in maintaining that property, or the money has to come back, you have to repay. There's something in there to also encourage that, to let people know that we're serious about it. And that was only a suggestion. I don't want to make things onerous for people, but I think it's important when we're using taxpayer money, and that's my question on the targeted businesses was, I didn't notice that targeted business was in each section. Some sections, for example, said any business. They didn't say any targeted business. Some sections said any existing or targeted new business. Some said an existing targeted business. Some said an existing business. My question was, when we're doing this, when we're referring to these targeted grants, that perhaps the best way to deal with those inconsistencies, if they're not supposed to be there, is to refer everyone to attachment C.
I would agree.
See what I'm trying to say?
No, I do. And there's some of these programs that in here refer to attachment C.
And some don't.
And some don't.
Yes, that's what I know.
And
That's
some of
what
that-
brought up my question.
Some of that is intentioned, if it depending on what the program is. And if we have any inconsistencies in there, and I'd have to go back and look.
And I've
but
written
if it's
some down.
supposed to be attachment C, we'll make sure that where it's not mentioned there in another place in that same program,
Mm-hmm.
that we get that Right. in
Okay,
terms of the
because I
target.
wanted to make sure, and maybe in the area where it said, it particularly came to some of the funding issues, if it said existing business for that, maybe that's what we meant.
Right.
And I'm not arguing the point. And then the next one would say an existing targeted business. So
Right.
when we're dealing with limited funds and we're talking targeted, I wanted to see some consistency there. However, if when you read that and say, no, we meant to say this because of X, Y, Z, that's all right as well. But I really, because of the limited funds, and we've had this, for example, Midtown can tell you what they don't want. So I would hate to see an existing business that they don't want to continue in that manner to be eligible. I think, and I've had this discussion with some of down the Downtown Redevelopment Board.
Right.
When we have these limited resources, if we want a XYZ store, then we should really go after that type of business for whatever the redevelopment areas want. So that was my point with the targeted businesses, not that it was attachment C, but to make sure that we were consistent in our application.
I agree with you, and we'll make sure that there's no inconsistencies there when it comes to the targeting of those programs that are intended to be targeted.
Reed, I have a question as well.
Yes, sir.
Some of these grants for both residential and commercial, depending on the period of time they run, the properties, if they move or something, they're expected to, will either lien the property or have a way of recovering the money. I'm wondering, is that done on an amortization type of schedule? If they were there for 2 years, do they get credit for that 2 years, and then they're have you clarified that yet?
No, there's no clarification. I mean, that's a new idea. Whether or not we're going to, if you're talking about in the future, putting some kind of a payback, no.
Yeah, because if you weren't there the whole time, you owe the city money. But on the other hand, if you were there most of the time, or you charge back the whole thing. And I wanted to ask also, is this 7A a time-sensitive issue that we're talking about here, or can we bring this back after we've had a chance to take a dive
We can
into
certainly
it?
bring this back. I don't see any reason that we can't continue this.
Yeah, because I agree with the mayor on that. That was one of the questions I continued to ask because of looking at other communities that do grants, especially targeted. For example, one of the things that we're targeting, and I'm jumping ahead here, but is owner occupancy of properties. What some communities do is you're required to actually live there X amount of years after the project is completed, because it is not to be flipped. It is not to be rented out. There are things, and I was talking to staff about that, and Marie was in on that. The things that we can do. Once again, it's not to be onerous. It's not to discourage people. But you are using our money to do a property. And not only that, but the goal is to have an owner-occupied property. Therefore, that's what we should make sure happens with that money. That is, and it's easy to find examples of that in other communities where they attach X amount of years, that must remain that way with this own. And then when it's sold, they do things so that when it's turned over, that it maintains that owner occupancy. So, or a new owner type of property. So. Those were things that I really would like us to investigate and look at, since we are being so targeted.
Thank you. And that was one of the other questions I saw.
That
here.
was
So
mine.
You
yes.
got that one, too.
I have pages, so those are probably all my questions.
And don't we have some of that language already in our CDBG?
Yes, there is.
That's a CDBG grant.
That's standard
yes.
practice.
That we could look at.
Probably, you're right.
I didn't use the federal government as our model, but I think the lien idea is a good idea to look at, and we'll certainly do that since we have some time here. I would also tell you on the leasehold improvements, if you turn to page 31 in your packet, you'll see under section B what it says grant awards criteria, where we added the word business. Mm-hmm. That I think is something we could change that wording to say lessee. Might make it a lot more exacting as to who's responsible for that grant. So that's just a suggestion that I could bring that back. Also, there's not only in the leasehold improvement program, I think the business facade program probably uses that same language.
Yes,
and look
I
at that
kind of
too.
mentioned that to Maria. I'd like to see, I think that might be helpful
Right.
as well. On that leasehold improvement, I did notice, and there's probably a reason for that, but I noticed that there were no Midtown targeted areas in the leasehold improvement list. Midtown was not there.
On
For
leasehold,
leasehold improvement.
I think, Jason, we did we? That's not added?
It's not added in what
It's-
I have. It adds Main Street, the E-zone, downtown
Well-
redevelopment, shopping, but it does not have Midtown
Yeah.
listed for eligibility.
We
Under leasehold improvement.
No, not under leasehold improvement.
Not under
It's
leasehold
it's under-
improvements, right.
It's under the other one,
Subsidy.
subsidy, but it's not under leasehold improvement.
Okay, well, we may want to consider that. We'll have a Midtown board meeting next week. I could bring that back to them.
Well, I have a question. I asked for the breakdown, and
Yes.
it shows 0 for Midtown for next year. So how are we going to do the grant subsidy program if we don't have any money in there, Reed?
Right now, I can't do it because there is no money in there.
And so how do we fix that?
We'll see about whether or not there's a way to reallocate or transfer funds. I can.
Okay. This
Talk
is
to
something I
finance.
asked for that I don't know if y'all received. I asked for it, and if you didn't, I know we want to get everybody a copy of it. But one of the things I asked for yesterday was an expenditure data for the prior 3 years and where it went and how we used our funds in each one of the CRAs. And then I asked for a breakdown of what we have for the coming year. So personally, even if we don't have any CRA money, I'd like to find some general funds to put in there that we have some money in Midtown to do these. It's not right. So
I really
that's how
wanted to
I
make
feel.
that clear that we're not
Okay.
transferring dollars from another CRA.
No. It would be
when
general.
Reed-
if-
No, when
yeah.
Reed mentioned transfer,
Okay.
you didn't
Right.
finish this.
But I don't think he meant
That's
CRA,
right.
and I wasn't thinking
Thank you.
CRA. But I think that we need to find some money since there's not any in there right now.
Right.
Okay. This is the document that I asked for yesterday. And I would like to say I'm glad to see that you put a significant amount in residential in the Main Street area. I think there's $100,000 in there for the residential. And again, we've talked about increasing the owner occupancy in that area and trying to deal with some of the problems associated with that. So I appreciate that staff did put that amount in there. Okay.
Could we?
Yeah.
Commissioner White, did you have a comment?
No, I was
think
just,
we need to get a
I was
We
going to
do.
ask if we were, when we budgeted for the grants, if there was, if they were separated into like residential and commercial. And looking
Yeah.
into here, I see that. And I don't know if we're looking at like a percentage of the total amount of tax increment that we get in each trust fund, kind of as a rule maybe moving forward. I know we've approved this budget, but seeing that there's something in the Midtown, if we said we took 5% or 10% of those funds every year and we put them in a grant program, whether we change it or not, I don't know if we could get to a point where it's kind of systematic like that. So, the percentage of what you're generating on taxes are going into this type of program. And
Please, Mr. Gilliland.
And the, we had a fairly tight budget year. We cut $25,000 out for City Hall security, to try and balance. So if we are going to take money out of something else in the general fund to put it into a grant program in Midtown, I really would like to know where you're going to find those dollars. And I want the budget amendment coming with it, because we need to make sure that we agree that we're going to reduce whatever program it is to reallocate those funds. I'm not saying we can't find it. I just want to make sure we know where it's coming from before we do the reallocation. But so we're going to continue this. Is that the?
If it's the pleasure of the commission, I think he said it's not time sensitive, and I think there's so many addendums that we could add to this. It would be better to just go back and wordsmith it and make sure we've captured the intent, and then bring it back at a later date if that's.
I think that's a great idea.
That's okay. I want to weigh in on this one. I think we need to look at some of this red light camera money that's coming in from some of those red light cameras in Midtown. I mean, if we want to look for the money, that's a good place to start.
And I hope that we can be accommodating. I think, as Mr. Ivy said in our last budget hearing, that we can look for $1 million at least for Midtown to transfer.
Well-
So why are you looking? There's a number for you.
Could I ask one more question,
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor? I just wanted to throw out, as we were looking at the different grants that, that we were, or the different, not the grants themselves, but the areas that we would consider for a grant. I would like to, if it's something that Commission might be interested in, but energy retrofitting for exteriors. That's something that and we can get, there's matching programs through as well, so that's a way to also expand on a grant by working on energy efficiency and retrofitting buildings. Thank you.
Reed, obviously, this is very important. This can really impact our community, obviously, in a great way. And I agree with everyone else. Dollars for Midtown, we have to find somewhere so that we can offer these same programs across the board. And it'll make a huge difference in the appearance of our community. And we do need to use the carrot and the stick. We need to induce people to improve the looks of their property and their businesses, as well as their homes. But on the other hand, if they use it and then sell their property, well, then they need to understand that there's another a side of this. But I think I've heard that everybody's fine with continuing this.
Yeah,
You
and
have
I
another
just
comment?
want to make sure everybody gets a copy of this before the next meeting so we can all look at it. And then today, y'all were emailed the third quarter CRA report, and you've also got the third quarter, I think, the combined. It was emailed to you, and we need to read all of that before this comes back to us. So we've got more information we need to digest before it comes back for a vote.
Thank you.
Okay?
Commissioner Reynolds, would you make a motion, change your motion to continue? And amend it, and would you amend
Yes.
your second to
Yes, to
continue?
continue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Aye. Like sign opposed. That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. To continue.
Moving on to item 7B, it is the Main Street Redevelopment Plan E-Zone Amendments Resolution. A resolution approving amendments to the redevelopment plan for the Main Street redevelopment area to incorporate goals, policies, and objectives provided in the E-Zone Master Plan, and to clarify and update the plan, and providing an effective date.
So move.
Second.
Commissioner Shelley is the motion. Commissioner Henry is the second.
Mr. Reed Berger to report.
Hey, hello, Reed.
Hello again. Wanted to give you sort of an overview. Some of you have not been through one of these plan amendments before, so what happens is after the redevelopment boards have looked at it and commented, and we've had a couple opportunities with the Main Street Board, and in looking at that, they did get their E-Zone report some time ago in August, so they've been reading that as sort of homework ahead of time. So they've actually had the master plan to digest for a while, and they did get the information in a timely manner in terms of the amendments and everything that you're dealing with tonight. Some comments made about something coming in late and being handed out on a Friday. That was the comprehensive plan section, only a very small section that was done on that piece that went to was just a courtesy recommendation to the planning board. And again, that did go out and get mailed on a Friday. So, but this packet went out and was there approximately 8 days prior in the hands of our board members. So hopefully that gave them a lot of time. I didn't really get complaints about that as any issue. So moving ahead, what we're asking you all to do is to take this information that you have and make a recommendation if you're agreeable with this or some revisions to it tonight to move ahead and provide it to the City Commission, which is yourselves. And you'd have two more opportunities on an ordinance so that the second meeting in October and the first meeting in November 2nd, there would be a public hearing for this particular proposed revision. And one of the other things we ask this evening is to direct us to send notice to the taxing district so they have an opportunity to comment on these changes as well. Okay. And so that's the process that's set up. Now, a few questions did come up in the last day or so, and I thought I'd, again, if I could, there's just a couple questions here. First of all, there were a number of comments that related to the blight study. Mm-hmm. Okay. And
yes.
What I'm referring to is that exhibit that's in the back that talks about all this old information about infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But we're talking about back in the beginning of the 1980s when it was required to have that information and put that into your plan. So that's been in our redevelopment plan all these years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And rather than have it in the front and have to kind of go through it, we thought we'd do what the downtown plan had done when they revised it back in the early 2000s and put it to the back of the plan. The state statute refers to having the blight study in there, so we said let's move it to the back. Unfortunately, we confused you because we put a red underline. It looked like maybe it was something new we were adding. It's not. It's just old information.
Reed,
okay.
I wasn't confused.
Good.
And my question still stands, is I want to know, and I told Jim this yesterday, all the stuff that's in the original blight study that has to do with infrastructure, where we are with it, what we've done, what we fixed and not fixed, and what it's going to cost. So that I still want to know. Okay?
All right.
That's the concern. People, you
Okay.
look at that and say, what have we done
Right.
since 1980?
And that's not answered in this. So I understand why the stuff's in there,
Okay.
but I want the up-to-date information.
Very good.
Okay?
Okay. Any other?
I have another question. On the attachments, it said that we would have the Main Street redevelopment plan amendments planning board packet in there. And what I did, has this gone to the planning board yet?
Yes.
Well, right, but I just thought it was interesting when, I just think it would be nice when you do that, that up there, I know it's coming from the Main Street South Atlantic Redevelopment Board, but to also mention, because when you mention the planning board, it would be, we usually get all of this information that relates back to the other boards that have looked at it, and that was not clarified on the front page when people are looking at it.
Okay.
To see that the planning board has looked at
On the
this,
front
has
page.
reviewed it, has made their comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, I've got one more.
Okay.
Paul, did you find the answer to the one I had yesterday about the sentence that was deleted about the parking?
Yes. I can
Okay.
answer that.
Yeah.
That is a reference to policy 5.43. It's on page 56 in your packet.
Yeah.
That has a strike through under a reference to transportation where it says that we're going to include Noble Street and do some other things that are in
Right.
the E-zone. And we're saying that all of these improvements will be consistent with the E-zone master plan. And then we struck out and the removal of on-street parking on Main Street. And with the idea that would be consistent anyway with the plan, or appears to be, but you can't look at the plan and say there's something that definitively says no parking on Main Street.
Okay.
So certainly if you feel that you want that to remain in there to make it very clear.
Well, it was in there, though, before. That was my
Correct.
question.
It is.
It was in there before, and
That
I
is
wanted to
correct.
know why it was taken out and when it was taken out.
It was taken out at the very beginning by staff because of the fact that we believe that whatever was consistent with the E-zone master plan in the development of Main Street, which talks about walkability, and there is in the master plan itself, when we looked at the cross sections, there's no parking, there's no cars. It talks about walkability. So the presumption in there is there are not cars in the future when we implement this plan.
Okay.
And that's staff's view on putting that in there, but we can certainly leave it if that's helpful.
I just wanted to know so you put it in, and then you decided to delete it before you ever took it to any boards or anybody?
No, we took it out and showed it to the boards, and we did not get any comments on that at the
They
redevelopment.
didn't
board.
read it. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
why don't we just leave it in there?
yeah, I don't understand
fine.
why you.
Yeah.
redline it when
it's
nobody
not-
said
it's
redline
not,
it, okay?
okay.
All right.
We can work with it.
Very good.
Okay,
Leave
any
that in
other
there.
questions or comments? Have a motion and a second, all in
Actually,
favor?
Mr. Mayor, do we have to amend the motion to make that change?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Second.
Commissioner Shelley?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You okay with the motion? And
Yes, sir.
also Commissioner Henry, the change? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, like sign opposed, that motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Reed.
Moving on to item number 8, it is comments and inquiries from the Community Redevelopment Agency Board and the city manager.
Okay, any comments?
I just want to make sure, my comment on the grant and the idea of the Midtown, I just want to be clear what I meant by that is that I feel like every redevelopment area that has money in it should have a percentage that's somewhat the same across the board that we're putting towards these grants. And I know that Midtown makes some money. What is it, $500,000 now about? Okay. So if we don't, I just question why we don't have any money there to set aside. I mean, if we're saying it's 15% from each one, well, we might have more in other CRAs because they're throwing off more taxable value, but we should have something to pull from that CRA. And I don't have my budget in front of me this year that we adopted, but that's kind of what my point was, is that.
I thought so.
Okay.
Okay.
And I thought your comment about sending a budget amendment along with the request was right on target there as well. Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I think in Midtown, too, we're doing so much catch-up till we already have a lot of projects out there that a lot of the funds are already allocated to. But I want to let you know, too, that $1 million was not just a frivolous amount that came up. We do have a long list of things that we would like to get done and have been trying to get done for quite some time. But like I say, doing catch-up, it's going to take more.
To do that.
And it needs to be fair and equitable. Our community
Yes.
at large needs to look good.
Yes, and I really
so-
I want to thank the mayor and the city manager and everyone for the magnolia trees on Magnolia Street. They are very beautiful, and I get a lot of great comments about them. I mean, it's really helping the neighborhood, and everybody's excited, and I think we'll see some other things flow from that.
Absolutely, it's going to look good. Very good. All right, this meeting is adjourned.